The words land like a slap before the actual slap does. You people always find a way to ruin something beautiful. Ezra Colt doesn't move. He's standing on the sidewalk outside the Hargrove Gallery on Magazine Street, New Orleans, wearing a jacket that's seen better years and boots caked with dried mud from the construction site he'd been surveying that morning. He's holding a coffee cup and reading the placard in the window, an announcement for a charity auction the following weekend. His name isn't on it. It will be. The woman who said those words is already pulling open the gallery door, designer bag swinging, dismissing him with her back before he can respond. He doesn't respond. He watches the door close behind her. Then he finishes reading the placard. Then he finishes his coffee. 3 weeks later, Ezra Colt walks into the Hargrove Gallery's annual gala through the front entrance, in a suit that costs more than the woman's bag. The room goes quiet in the way rooms do when something shifts, and no one can name what it is yet. She sees his face before he says a word. Her champagne glass tilts in her hand. Her mouth opens. She finally understands. New Orleans in late March breathes like something alive and half asleep. The air off the Mississippi is warm and thick, carrying the smell of river mud and praline and old wood baking in sun that arrived too early this year. The streets of the Garden District are canopied in live oak, the light coming through the branches in slow shifting pieces. The neighborhood has the particular quality of beauty that doesn't need to announce itself, which is how you know it's real. Ezra walks Magazine Street in the way he walks every street, quietly, attentively, taking in more than most people know he's taking in. He's 31. Medium build, natural hair trimmed close on the sides, wearing a faded jacket over a plain gray shirt. He carries a battered notebook and a measuring tape he probably doesn't need anymore but keeps out of habit. He passes a nail salon, a wine bar, a children's clothing boutique with a chalkboard sign out front advertising a spring sale. He passes a man walking a pair of greyhounds. He passes a couple arguing in soft voices on a bench, the kind of argument that's been going on for years. He stops in front of the Hargrove Gallery. It's a converted townhouse, pale yellow wrought iron balcony, window boxes full of something purple. The placard in the window reads, Second Chances Benefit Auction. Supporting Youth Arts Education, April 12th proceeds to Crescent Youth Initiative. Ezra studies it. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out his phone, checks a date, puts the phone away. His assistant had sent him the venue information 6 weeks ago. Bellamont Events Group purchased the Hargrove Gallery building last year, transferred to a holding company registered in Baton Rouge. Ezra knows who owns it now. Ezra is who owns it now. He hasn't told anyone that yet. He pulls out the battered notebook, writes something, flips back 3 pages and reads what's there. His mother's handwriting, preserved under a laminated sheet he'd taped over it years ago so the ink wouldn't fade. She had beautiful handwriting. He gets that from her. She used to say that beauty was the thing people tried to take from you first, because they knew it was the thing most likely to remind you of your own worth. His mother's name was Cora Colt. She died when Ezra was 24, in a hospital room in Metairie that smelled of bleach and resignation. She was 51. She should not have died at 51. The gallery door opens and a woman steps out, phone pressed to her ear. Oversized sunglasses pushed up into blonde hair, a white linen blazer over wide-leg trousers. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. The kind of woman who moves through public space like it's been arranged for her specifically. She almost walks into Ezra. He steps back, apologizes out of reflex. Old habit, the kind that gets trained into you early. She doesn't apologize. She looks at him. The look takes less than a second. His jacket, his boots, the coffee cup in his hand. Some calculation happens behind her sunglasses, and the result of that calculation is that he doesn't register. You people always find a way to ruin something beautiful, she says into the phone, and it's not entirely clear if she means Ezra or something someone on the other end of the call told her, but the way her eyes sweep past him, through him, makes the meaning clear enough. She walks away. Her heels click against the brick sidewalk. Ezra stands where he is. He thinks about his mother. He thinks about how she used to look at people who spoke to her like that, not with anger, not with hurt, but with a kind of quiet pity, like she was watching someone reveal something about themselves they hadn't intended to show. He finishes his coffee. He turns and walks back toward his car. His phone buzzes. His assistant, Petra. The paperwork's finalized. The gallery building's officially in your name. You want to announce? Not yet, Ezra says. Keep it quiet. The benefit auction is in 3 weeks. I know. She's going to find out eventually. She will, Ezra says. I want to see something first. He ends the call. In his jacket pocket, his fingers find the laminated page from his mother's notebook. He doesn't pull it out. He knows what it says. He's been knowing what it says for 7 years. The woman's name is Susanna Hargrove Penn. Her grandfather built the gallery in 1962. Her father expanded it in the 80s. She inherited it 12 years ago along with a real estate portfolio and a foundation bearing the Hargrove name. And she spent the years since making sure everyone in New Orleans knows that the Hargrove name means something. It does mean something, just not what she thinks it means. Her husband, Todd Penn, is a real estate developer. Tall, tanned, the kind of man whose handshake is calibrated to communicate dominance. He and Susanna have been married for 19 years, and he has been looking for a graceful exit for the last 6. He hasn't found one. The Hargrove money is the foundation of the Penn portfolio, and walking away from Susanna means walking away from everything he spent 2 decades, building on top of what she brought to the marriage. He knows this. He doesn't like knowing it. He knows that too. Their son, Cooper, is 26. He works at a private wealth management firm because his mother arranged it, not because he wanted to. He does not want to be there. He doesn't know what he wants to be, which is its own kind of quiet crisis that nobody at the firm has noticed because his last name gets him through most evaluations without scrutiny. Cooper was the one walking behind his mother that day on Magazine Street. He heard what she said. He saw the man she said it to. He noticed the man didn't flinch. He couldn't stop thinking about it afterward. Ezra Colt did not grow up in New Orleans. He grew up in Shreveport, in a neighborhood where the houses were small and the ambitions were treated as liabilities. His mother cleaned other people's homes for 22 years. His father left when Ezra was 7, which was painful for a year, and then became background noise that Ezra eventually learned to ignore. He was good at math in a way that made his teachers uncomfortable. Not because it was intimidating. Because it was inconvenient. Smart kids from that neighborhood needed to be managed carefully, directed toward vocational programs, realistic expectations, practical paths. Ezra's geometry teacher, Mr. Fontenot, told him in the 7th grade that he had the kind of mind that could do real good if he found the right trade. His mother, when he told her, said, "He told you that because he doesn't know how to teach you. That's his limitation, not yours." She saved for 10 years to send him to LSU. Not the full cost. Loans and a partial scholarship did most of the work, but enough to make it real, to make it feel like something she had built with him rather than something he'd stumbled into. He studied architecture, then urban planning. Then he started looking at the relationship between physical space and economic opportunity in underserved communities. And that became something he couldn't stop looking at. His thesis was on historical redlining and its visible legacy in the built environment of Louisiana's cities. His advisor said it was the best student thesis he'd seen in 15 years. He graduated. He got a job with a small firm in Baton Rouge. He worked for 4 years. He saved. He invested carefully in the way that people who grew up without a safety net invest, with the attention of someone who cannot afford to be wrong. He started his own company at 28. Colt Development, focused on mixed-use affordable housing projects with community arts integration. He had 3 employees and 1 small contract and a belief that he could figure out the rest. He figured out the rest. By the time he was 31, Colt Development had completed 7 projects across Louisiana, had a partnership with a national foundation, and was being written about in trade publications as an example of what community-centered development could look like. He never forgot where he came from. Not as a narrative device, not as a branding strategy. Just as fact. His mother never saw the company. She got sick when he was 23, while he was still in school. He took a semester off to sit with her through treatment. He went back and finished. She held on long enough to see him graduate. She died 8 months later. He found the medical records in her things. The claim denials, the letters from Hargrove Property Group's insurance subsidiary, the paper trail of a system that had decided her life was not worth the cost of treatment. The denial letters were signed in a neat, looping hand. S. Hargrove, Director of Claims Administration. Susanna Hargrove. Ezra had been 24 years old, sitting in his mother's apartment at 2 in the morning with a box of papers spread across the kitchen table. He did not cry. He had already done that. He folded the letter. He put it in his notebook behind his mother's handwriting. He closed the notebook. He went to bed. He built something instead. The video appears on Instagram 3 days after the sidewalk incident. Someone had been filming the street from across magazine, catching the afternoon light for an aesthetic reel, and the moment ended up in the frame by accident. The woman stepping out of the gallery, the near collision, the words, the way the man stood still afterward. The caption on the post is simple. She didn't even look at him when she said it. The comments fill up quickly. By the second day, it has 40,000 views. By the third, local news has picked it up. A journalist named Davina Ose, no relation to the family in the file, that's a coincidence of names that the algorithm doesn't care about, covers arts and culture for the Crescent City Courier. She watches the video 4 times. Then she watches it 4 more times. Something about the man's stillness catches her. Not defeat. She's seen what defeat looks like, and it moves differently. This looks like patience. The specific patience of someone who already knows something important and is choosing when to say it. She starts by calling the gallery. A publicist answers, says Ms. Hargrove Penn is unavailable, says the incident is being looked into, says the gallery remains committed to an inclusive environment. The language is polished. The language is nothing. Davina does what she always does. She talks to the people nobody thinks to talk to. The gallery's former exhibitions coordinator, a woman named Portia Ewell, left the job 8 months ago. She now works at a framing shop on the other side of the city, and she agrees to meet for coffee. There were rules, Portia says. She's stirring her drink slowly, not looking at Davina directly, not written down anywhere, but everybody knew them. What kind of rules? If someone came in who didn't look like the demographic, her word, demographic, we were supposed to steer them toward the free admission days, suggest they come back then, make it comfortable for everyone. Comfortable for everyone meaning, you know what it means. Portia finally looks up. We all know what it means. Nobody says it directly. That's the whole point. Davina files a records request with the city the same afternoon. What she's looking for takes longer to find than she expected, but her source at the planning department, someone who owes her for a story she chose not to write 2 years ago, comes through. Insurance complaint records. Hargrove Property Group 2010 to 2019. The subsidiary dissolved in 2020 when the family restructured their holdings. The complaints are archived, technically public, practically buried. There are 9 complaints on record. 7 involve denial of claims by Black and Latino policyholders. 4 list the reviewing officer. The signature is consistent. S. Hargrove. Davina reads the names. She cross-references the records. She spends an evening in the city archive pulling death certificates, medical records, anything public that connects to the policyholders named in the denials. She finds a name. Cora Eugenia Colt. New Orleans, August 11, 2017. Cause of death, pancreatic cancer, metastatic. She was 51. The denial letter in her file, Davina's source found a copy that hadn't been fully sealed in the restructuring, cites pre-existing condition language, a gallbladder complaint from 3 years prior, routine, unrelated, used as a basis for denying coverage for the cancer screening she'd requested. The denial was signed in 2016. Cora died in 2017. Davina's hands are shaking when she types the name into a search engine. Cora Colt, Mother Ezra Colt, founder of Colt Development. She closes her laptop. She sits in the quiet of her apartment for a long time. Then she opens her laptop again and looks up what Colt Development is worth. She picks up her phone and calls a number she's been holding for 2 days. Ezra answers on the second ring. Miss Osi, he says, like he knew it would be her. Mr. Colt, she doesn't waste time. I found the denial letter. I know about your mother. A pause, long enough that Davina rechecks the call is still connected. I figured someone would, he says finally. It took longer than I expected. You knew who Susanna Hargrove was before she said what she said on the street. I knew who she was before I got on the plane to come here, Ezra says. I've known for 7 years. Davina's pen moves across her notepad. Then why? Why didn't you do anything? You have the resources. You could have taken everything her family built. Ezra is quiet for a moment. When he speaks, his voice is slower, like he's choosing each word individually. My mother used to say that the worst thing you could do to people like that wasn't to take what they had. It was to show them what they missed, what they were too small to see. He pauses. I came to New Orleans to see if anything had changed, whether the money and the name still meant the same thing to Susanna Hargrove that it did the year she signed my mother's denial, whether she'd grown into anything different. And had she, you heard what she said. Davina writes that down. Then she says, I want to publish this. All of it. I know. Will you let me? Another pause. Then, print the truth. Including the parts that don't make me look like a hero. The fact that I came here with an agenda. The fact that I'd been watching their finances for 2 years. Let people decide what that makes me, and what happens after. There's something happening in 3 weeks, Ezra says. Be at the Hargrove Gallery on April 12th. Bring a camera. The line goes dead. Cooper Penn finds Davina. He calls her desk line on a Tuesday morning, voice low, speaking quickly like someone who's been rehearsing and is worried the words will dissolve if he slows down. I need to talk to you about my mother, he says, and about what my father found out last week. They meet in a parking garage downtown. Cooper arrives first, sits in his car until he sees Davina, then steps out. He's younger than she expected. There's something around his eyes that she recognizes, the particular exhaustion of someone who has been pretending for a long time. My father figured out that the gallery building was sold, Cooper says. He hands her a folder through the car window. Not to a developer, not to some LLC he could trace to a stranger. He figured it out last week. Who bought it? Davina opens the folder. A property transfer document, Bellamont Events Group LLC, and behind it, the parent company registration, Colt Development, Incorporated in Louisiana, Principal Officer Ezra James Colt. Ezra Colt owns my mother's gallery building, Cooper says. He's owned it for 8 months. My father found out and he didn't tell my mother because Cooper stops. Looks out the windshield. Because there's a licensing deal my father has been negotiating for the Hargrove name, a hospitality branding partnership worth about $18 million. The partner is Colt Development. Davina stares at the document. My father has been trying to complete this deal while also hiding from my mother that the man she humiliated on the street is the man he needs to sign the contract, Cooper says. He's been managing both things simultaneously for 3 weeks. Does your mother know any of this? She thinks the gallery is still family-owned. She thinks the incident on the street is handled. She thinks everything is fine. Cooper's jaw tightens. My father is going to let her walk into that benefit gala in 3 weeks, not knowing who owns the building she's walking into. And you're telling me because Cooper is quiet for a moment. A car passes on the level below them, headlights sweeping the concrete. Because I watched her say those words to a man on the street and I watched him stand completely still and I thought, that's what I do. I just stand there. Every time she does something like this, every time my father does something like this, he looks at Davina. I don't want to do that anymore. He hands her a second document through the window. Email thread printed. Todd Penn's address at the top, his attorneys below it. The subject line, Sterling matter. Keep quiet until after gala. He knows everything, Cooper says. He's known since 2 weeks after the incident. He found the insurance connection himself, trying to figure out who Colt was. And he decided the deal was more important. Davina looks at the email thread. She looks at Cooper. Your father covered this up to protect an $18 million deal. My mother went after a man on a public street because she thought he was nobody, Cooper says. And my father found out he wasn't and said nothing because the money was more important than the truth. He closes his car door. That's who my family is, Miss Ossie. I've known it for years. I just finally found the reason to say it out loud. April 12th, the Hargrove Gallery Benefit Auction. 7:30 in the evening. The gallery is full. Jazz quartet in the corner. Past appetizers. Champagne flutes catching the light from pendant lamps that Susanna had installed last fall at significant expense. The crowd is exactly what she designed it to be. Well-dressed, well-resourced, the particular brand of New Orleans wealth that traces itself back 3 generations and dresses like it. Susanna moves through the room in a burgundy gown, her hair pinned up, diamond earrings that her mother left her. She's in her element. She knows every face, every story, every useful connection. This is her room. It has always been her room. Todd is by the bar. He's been by the bar since they arrived. He's on his 3rd drink and it's only 8 o'clock. Susanna noticed, but has chosen, as she often does, to manage the noticing quietly. Cooper is standing near the back wall. He came because she asked him to come, because she needs the family present for the photographs. He is holding a glass of sparkling water and he hasn't moved in 20 minutes. At 8:15, the room's attention shifts. It starts near the entrance. A change in the quality of sound, conversations briefly pausing, the small hydraulic shift of people turning. Susanna feels it before she sees it. She turns. A man is walking into her gallery. He's wearing a charcoal suit, well-fitted, nothing showy. Natural hair trimmed close. He walks like someone who moves through every room with the same unhurried assurance because the room's opinion of his presence has never particularly mattered to him. Susanna doesn't recognize him at first. Then she does. The sidewalk, the mud-caked boots, the coffee cup, the words she'd said. She barely remembered saying them. It had been such a small moment. Her words floating past a stranger she'd already stopped seeing. Now he's in her gallery. In her gallery. She moves toward him, already forming the words, already preparing the polite removal, the security-adjacent suggestion. He sees her coming. He stops walking and waits for her to reach him. Patient. Still. The same stillness she'd walked past 3 weeks ago. Miss Hargrove Penn, he says, before she can speak. Something about the way he says her name makes her stop. I don't believe we've been formally introduced. His voice is even, quiet, warm, in the way of a fire that doesn't need to prove it can burn. Ezra Colt. Colt Development. A brief pause. The company that owns this building. The room has gone the specific quiet of people pretending they aren't listening. Susanna's mouth opens, closes, the champagne glass in her hand tips slightly. You? She stops. Starts again. You're standing in a room you've run for 12 years, Ezra says. In a building you thought was yours. He holds eye contact. I'm sorry to tell you it hasn't been for 8 months. That's impossible. Her voice has lost its luster. The room's particular acoustic is making everything she says sound smaller than she means it. You were on the street. You were wearing a jacket, Ezra says. You decided what that meant. Todd Penn appears at Susanna's shoulder from nowhere, the speed of a man who has been waiting for exactly this moment. His face is pale. Colt, he says, a greeting and an apology and a plea all compressed into one syllable. Mr. Penn. Ezra doesn't look at him immediately. He keeps his eyes on Susanna. Then he turns to Todd. You've read the letter from my attorney? Todd's jaw works. We were going to. There are conversations we still need to have. There are. Ezra agrees pleasantly. We'll have them. But first, your wife and I have something to finish. He reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out a folded document, places it on the table beside them, gently like setting down something fragile. That's a copy of a claim denial issued by Hargrove Property Group's insurance subsidiary in 2016. Policyholder, Cora Eugenia Colt. He doesn't touch the document after he sets it down. My mother, she had pancreatic cancer, and she was denied coverage for the screening that might have caught it early. The denial was signed by the Director of Claims Administration. Susanna has stopped trying to speak. That director was you, Ezra says. The room is completely quiet now. Nobody is pretending anymore. I found the denial letter when I was 24 years old, 2 months after I buried her. I've been carrying it for 7 years. Ezra looks at Susanna with an expression that contains no anger, not forgiveness either. Something more complicated and maybe more honest than either of those. I came to New Orleans to see who you were now, whether any of those 7 years had changed anything. I didn't. Susanna's voice is barely there. I didn't know what. There were hundreds of claims I didn't. I know you didn't know my mother's name, Ezra says. That's the point. A sound comes from Susanna that isn't a word. Cooper, across the room, looks at the floor. Todd Penn's hand is on his wife's shoulder, but the gesture is automatic, empty. He is looking at Ezra with an expression of calculated attention that has nothing to do with his wife's pain and everything to do with $18 million. The building, Susanna says finally. Her voice is steadier now, shoring itself up out of necessity. What are you going to do with it? Ezra glances around the room. The paintings on the wall, the youth artworks for the benefit auction. Watercolors and charcoal drawings, many of them clearly made by teenagers. He looks at those last. My mother loved art, he says. She used to take me to free gallery days when I was small. She said beauty was for everyone, not just people who could afford the admission. He looks back at Susanna. I'm going to keep the gallery open. I'm going to make the free days the main days and charge for the exclusive events. I'm going to rename the foundation. He pauses, and the proceeds from tonight's auction are going to the Crescent Youth Initiative, as planned. I had Petra confirm it with the organizers this morning. That part doesn't change. In the back of the room, Davina Osi has a recorder running and is writing in her notebook with the focused speed of someone who knows the story they're holding. Susanna stands in the center of her gallery, the gallery that is no longer hers, And the expression on her face is something Davina will spend a long time trying to describe in print. It isn't just shame. It's something worse and more useful. Recognition. The slow, irreversible process of seeing yourself clearly for the first time. I didn't know her name, Susanna says again. Quieter this time. Not a defense. No, Ezra says. You didn't. That's what I needed you to understand. He picks up the denial letter from the table, folds it back into his pocket. Looks at Todd Penn one more time, a look that communicates a very specific business message without a word. And then Ezra Colt walks through his gallery toward the youth artwork on the back wall, and he stands there looking at a watercolor painting of the Mississippi at sunset, done by a 14-year-old from the 9th Ward. The story runs in the Courier 4 days later. Davina's editor didn't kill it. The Hargrove family didn't threaten the paper. Whether that was because they knew it wouldn't work this time, or because something in Susanna had shifted enough to stop fighting, Davina never found out. The piece ran above the fold, online and in print. By the end of the first day, national outlets were picking it up. By the end of the week, Hargrove Property Group's insurance subsidiary, already dissolved, but newly visible, was being examined by the State Insurance Commissioner's office. 6 additional claim denials were flagged for review. 6 families. 6 families who'd never stopped carrying what had been done to them. Todd Penn filed for divorce 6 weeks after the gala. The $18 million partnership with Colt Development never concluded, not because Ezra withdrew, but because Todd's attorneys advised him that proceeding would only attract more scrutiny. He walked away from it. From the Hargrove money, finally, the graceful exit had been there all along. He'd just needed the walls to come down first. Cooper Penn sent Ezra a letter. 2 pages, handwritten. He didn't ask for anything. He said he was sorry he'd stood still for so long. He said he didn't know yet what he was going to do with his life, but that he'd finally started asking. Ezra wrote back, 1 paragraph. He said his mother used to tell him that figuring out what you're not was half the work. He said that wasn't nothing. The Hargrove Gallery reopened on a Saturday in June as the Colt Community Arts Center. Admission free every day, private events available for rental at rates that funded 3 full-time youth arts educators. The ribbon at the door was held by 6 teenagers from the Crescent Youth Initiative. Ezra's mother's name was on the placard beside the entrance. Cora Eugenia Colt, 1966 to 2017. In her memory, and in the memory of everyone whose name was on a letter they didn't deserve. He stood outside afterward, looking up at the building. Someone from Davina's paper asked him what came next. Ezra tucked his hands into his jacket pockets. The worn one, not the suit. He'd kept it. Same thing as always, he said. You find the empty space, you figure out what it could hold, and you build. He walked back inside. His mother's name stayed on the wall. That's where it belongs. That's where it's going to stay.